Whilst we're still busy trying to wrap one's brain around the madness that happened in Edo, the next thing you are hearing are people purportedly speaking on behalf of the North, threatening reprisals against Igbos, as though Uromi is in the Southeast. Even if it were, how would the actions of a few criminals become the responsibility of entire ethnic nations? How many Fulani marauders have they had to cope with when the state had turned the blind eye?
My people, breaking news, matters arising. So Dele Farotimi finally drums bombshell on what is currently happening in Uromi, Edo State. My people, in fact, a lot of people are now trying to relate this to the Igbos and blaming the Igbos for this. And the Igbos are not taking it lightly at all. Before I tell you all what Dele Farotimi has to say and my own opinion on this, there's this news actually trending right now where the Edo State Governor Monday Okpebolo has suspended the commander of the Edo State Security Corps, CP Friday Ibadan, alongside all illegal vigilante groups operating in the state. You all know that recently there've been a lot of things happening in Uromi in Edo State currently, and these people are always, as usual, still routing it to the Igbo people. Guys, in the clip I'm about to show you, Dele Farotimi drums a bombshell, like he literally exposed a lot, and I honestly cannot wait for you guys to see this.
For want of a better word, must be encouraged to speedily wade into this madness before it escalates, because madness appears to have become the order of the day in our country. And there is a way the Uromi murders, the precursors to the murders, and what has been happening in the aftermath ties into my message this morning. But to deal specifically with it in the week that was, whilst we're still busy trying to wrap one's brain around the madness that happened in Edo, the next thing you are hearing are people purportedly speaking on behalf of the North, threatening reprisals against Igbos, as though Uromi is in the Southeast. Even if it were, how would the actions of a few criminals become the responsibility of entire ethnic nations? But it is, now, I don't want to speak to the issues within the madness in Uromi, because speaking to it would drag me into my morning sermon, and it's not time for that yet. And then in the same week, I've witnessed the farcical gyrations and moral somersaults that the amoral INEC has played in the Natasha Akpabio game. The same INEC that was saying that these things had no address suddenly found addresses, and what began like play is looking like it's going to become real. So what we saw, where people were busy collating fraudulent signatures, the entire process is riddled with fraud and fraudulence, and we're actually watching, and believe it or not, it will form the basis for the recall of a senator of the Feudal Republic of Nigeria. When you are watching all of these, you know, I've told you, especially in speaking to Simi, and that's another issue that happened in the week that was, the one that disappeared from Port Harcourt, reappeared in a hotel room in Abuja, is busy reading a script. What? The week that was really a very mad week. It was one in which credulity was stretched almost beyond the boundary of reason. And then there was the drama that played out in the Senate, where Baribe suddenly remembered that he's a champion of the Southeast and was pushing Nwosu immortalization. Look, here is what I think we should all focus on. I know it's been very easy for people to say that Nwosu has been denied because it's from the Southeast. I don't think that's actually the issue. I think you're missing the point when you say it's because of his ethnicity. I'm not suggesting that that wouldn't be the case for some, but I think there is a deeper message that you are missing. For decades, first Obasanjo, in fact, the entire system worked to deny acknowledging the fact that Abiola won the June 12 election. Everybody knew. Even his worst enemies knew. But everybody denied the obvious because it helped to delegitimize that victory. That was the basis for the denial. We all knew. Every man and his dog knew the result of that election. So it wasn't like they were denying acknowledging that he won on account of his ethnicity, for instance. It was a Yoruba man that was the president. Obasanjo could have done exactly what was done 20-something years later. He could have, but you see, the problem is if they held up these standards, then they are forced to live up to those standards. So be careful not to get distracted. The only reason they did not and could not have immortalized the man is because he rebukes the system that has brought them about. Understand it and don't get distracted by these, their childish games of ethnicities and the rest. It's just a game of distraction. When a system that recognizes fairness is ever installed in Nigeria, then people like Nwosu would be properly recognized and deified. But a society that is reinforced by the mutual lies of, they may hate themselves. Get this clear. They may hate themselves, but they are united in an understanding that they mustn't set good standards for you. Because if they set these standards, you begin to ask questions. If this man conducted elections in 1993 and is being deified after the most fraudulent election and judicial process to enthrone a president, you will then begin to demand a process as transparent as the one that the man evolved and that we are all acclaiming. But that democracy is not accommodating of free and fair elections. And that is why you don't see any one of the ones that are preparing to run in 2027 talking about electoral reform so that they might empower you. The problem is that they must not empower you and they must not give you totems that you will demand that they live up to. So that is the problem with Nwosu. You got that? Let's be clear. Now, I still got like maybe a few seconds, so let me speak to something that was very funny last week. So I spoke, or shall I say, tweeted in defense of Chidi, and then they all went mad. I don't mind you guys going crazy on me, see? The thing is, I live in the future that you are destroying today. I see the effect of the things that you are doing now and the ones you did yesterday. I see the effects in the future because I live in the future. You live in the now and you forget tomorrow. I live in tomorrow and I see the destruction you're wreaking today. Because I see the destructions, I can't keep quiet, right? So I hate bigotry. Let's be clear about that. But before there was a GD, there were multiple agbayas, omode shares, people who took it upon themselves to weaponize hatred. That was the week that was. This is a brand new week. And in this new week, I want us to speak to the subject, the original criminals. Is that what I have found? Let me clarify something. I found that knowledge is revelatory in nature. Just when you thought you had finished speaking to an issue, you find that speaking to that issue brings you to the knowledge and realization of associated issues. So the truth becomes more like a ball of wool. As you pull on it, comes out. You find more. So today I want us to speak to the original criminal. You know, we spoke to shadow criminals last week. This week, I will be going back to my Yoruba root for my scripture this morning. I use this proverb a lot of times. I've pondered it for years, and each time I've pondered it, pretty much like that ball of wool thread. It keeps coming. So what I want to talk to, Yorubas will say that ìlú tí kò sí òfin, ẹ̀ṣẹ̀ kò sí níbẹ̀. I'm sure you've heard me say that several times. What it says is that a land devoid of laws cannot. It's always difficult to interpret this, but let me give it a shot. Because ordinarily, if you were going to just do straight, it just simply says that the land without laws have no sins. But that is not what the Yorubas. Oh, no volume? All right, so I'm being told there is no volume, so I'm going to get off my. Can you guys hear me? I need some indication before I go on. Good thing I'm just starting. All right, so I'm told you can hear me. Okay, perfect. So I'll walk without the mics that somebody said that I saw that online, so but it's okay, no problem. So here's the thing. You have to say, a land devoid of laws is also devoid of sins. But this is and would be anathemic to the Yoruba worldview. The Yorubas have all kinds of sets of rules and taboos and laws, do's and don'ts by which they regulate their daily lives. They would make sure, all right, so they would make sure at all points in time that whatever it was, there were a set of rules that governed it. Within the home, there were a set of rules governing how people related with each other. Within the society, there were rules by which people related with each other. Within the farms, there were rules. The way you would even be able to place your broom, the way you eat, the time you eat, the kind of things you can eat and when you can eat them. Yorubas had extremely regimented, rule-based societies. So how could they possibly be speaking about Ilutiko Sofe, a land devoid of rules? It was impossible for the Yorubas to have ever been speaking to a place devoid of rules. So every time I have sat down over the years from my childhood, from when I learned that proverb, hearing it from my grandparents, from seeing the kind of rules by which we live, it always seems like a contradiction, and I often wonder, exactly what do they mean? But keep that proverb in mind. We'll come back to it. We need to travel a little deeper. But that proverb, keep it in mind. Who is a criminal? Because I'm talking about the original criminal. Who is the criminal? Now, I believe that if you go into any dictionary, it will tell you that a criminal is a person who has committed a crime. But it will also tell you that he is a person who has been convicted. It's not true. A person who has committed a crime and a person who has been convicted. So it is not necessarily the convicted person that you hold to be a criminal, but the person who you have witnessed serially committing crimes is equally a criminal. So when I speak about criminals, I should know. After all, I've been in prison. Yes, I spent 20 days in prison, not in detention, in prison. I have met criminals, people who have been convicted of their crimes. I also met a whole lot of people and shared space with them and fellowship with them who swore that they committed no crimes, or at least not the ones that they were charged with, and whose stories I verily believe. So they were in prison, but they were not criminals. But there were also criminals who are already in prison. But who are the original criminals? Because I wasn't speaking to those ones. But before you can speak to who the original criminals are, let's ask ourselves, what are laws? It's very simple. If you say ask what laws are, you speak about laws, you speak about bylaws, you speak about constitution, you speak about these and any set of rules that governs a people, system of rules by which a people or a country or community recognizes those laws that they recognize as regulating the actions of their members and which they may enforce by the imposition of penalties and or sanctions. Those are laws. But there are two critical elements when you're talking about laws. The society recognizes this to be laws. That's the first one. Second, it may, as a society, enforce those laws. So there are two aspects to this. There's a law in Nigeria, at least on our statute books, on bigamy, which means that you may not marry more than one wife. Or even your chief justices have married more than one wife, but we have a way of shading the meaning. And how do we shade the meaning? Simple. You marry a wife under the act, that's at the registry, and then you proceed to marry multiple ones by customary law. Nobody can pass that law beyond that. That is what it is at the end of the day. So the society does not recognize the validity of that law, and because we do not recognize the validity of that law, it has never held. Oh, no smoking in public spaces. There are big laws on our books, but nobody recognizes the validity of these laws. So people keep doing whatever they please. And then you talk about may enforce. Let me share one with you. So you're right there at the traffic light, especially in Lagos. I don't know about other states. I live in Lagos. I can only speak to that. Everywhere in Lagos, no exception, wherever you are. So you're driving, and then you came to a traffic light, and you stopped at the traffic light. The next thing you know, that guy driving the commercial bus, he cycles right there in front of you. Last man is there. Lawman self did there. The police is standing right there, and the guy zooms off, goes to the bus stop right next to the last man guy, and he picks his passenger, and he continues. You know why? You are at the traffic light. God forbid that light was yellow where you moved. The same last mile official, the same policeman will grab you. So who is the criminal? Because you know when the question comes and you begin to ask, who are the criminals? I tell you that the problem we have is that we have all become as criminals. The original criminals are drawn from within the society in which we live because our norms have collapsed as a people. For laws to be laws, the people must recognize these laws as laws. And then the laws must be even-handedly enforced for it to be valid in a society governed by law. So if you're asking who the original criminals are, it's me and you, all of us. But some people in every society are the ones that are structured to carry the law. So here is where we go. Your policemen are criminals. Let me explain myself. In Yoruba, the word olopa means a bearer of staff. What staff does the person bear? The staff of the king's authority, a staff of office. So when he bears this insignia and he goes to a place, he pronounces the king's word and he is called Olopa, Olopa Oba. Right? Now, if the person is Olopa, but the person who bears the Oba, the signal of the authority of the law, is himself unrestrained by the law, because the law does not grant a power that it also does not restrain. When the law grants you a power, it sets the limits of the powers that it has granted so that the power may not be abused. Power corrupts. That is the totality of the purpose of power. So when the law, and every society breeds power, so when the law grants a power, it also sets the guardrails by which that power is exercised. So when a person takes power by law, quote and unquote, whether the process has been subverted or not, but this power is taken by law, the power is equally limited by law, except the criminality that governs the electoral process is not allowed to end with the electoral process and has been carried over into the governing system. When criminality is now carried over into the governing system, the rulers become as criminals because they are not bridled by law. When the interpreters of the law finds basis for interpretation outside of the canons of law that they are asked to interpret consistently, when judicial anarchy reigns supreme instead of the rule of law, what you have are criminals in error. Now, when the gatekeepers of public morality become criminal themselves, how do they become criminal? If it is your job, your self-assigned job, in the name of God, to speak in the name of God, but you become blinded to the evil of society, what happens at that point is that you become complicit in the evil and you become as those that you were called to speak truth to. If the original criminals are outside and innocent persons are within the prison walls, let me share one experience with you. When I was in Ekiti prison, there was, in fact, most of the people in the prison built for about 250 people, had over 800 inmates. Well over 500 of those inmates were awaiting trial. And the bulk of them were in prison using, they came to prison by virtue of a process known in Ekiti magistrate court as Form K. Once the police prosecutor files the case before a magistrate in Ekiti, and he files a Form K, that Form K is asking the magistrate to send that person to prison for at least 1 month. There is nothing anybody can do to move a bail application that 90-something% of the magistrates were not interested in. Once the police came with the Form K, that person was going to prison for at least 1 month. That is the kind of judicial system, law enforcement system that we have evolved. And we speak at any level to a society that is devoid of criminals. How? Let me remind you. The executive, your governors, your local government chairmen, before you start talking about your presidents, they profit from the insecurity. If they don't profit from it, if they are not criminals profiting from it, why are they driving bulletproof cars when you are left to the mercies of the elements? If they were not driving bulletproof cars, would they not address the subject of insecurity? The roads are bad, but they are driving SUVs. They even insult us by appropriating money to buy SUVs for themselves. They insult us and tell us that it's because the roads are bad. Who are the real criminals? Who? They don't build hospitals because their own doctors are abroad. And why would they build any hospitals when they don't care about me and you? And we're still talking about criminals in prison? Who are the original criminals, if not those who deny you, deliberately deny you good life? And yes, the ones that ask you to pray for them. Are they not complicit in this evil? And are they different from the criminals who perpetrate the evil that leads to the insecurity that they cure by buying bulletproof cars and arming themselves with soldiers and all kinds of military personnel and policemen to protect themselves and their cronies? Why is me and you have to keep living by faith? How? How? Education? I will remind you. I warrant that you will not find Nigerian rulers' children in any of our tertiary institutions in any significant number, especially the government-owned ones. The children are abroad or in private universities when they want to pretend that they live as commoners as well, so that they can say their children are in schools in Nigeria. They don't put their children in systems that they run. How? Nigeria once had the record of being the 6th largest producer of crude in the entire world. #1 in Africa. This country has more hydrocarbon than it has crude.
but it flares and wastes it when it's you harness it and build local industry. And you tell me those who have superintended that system for over 50 years are not criminals? How? This country had 4 refineries, government-owned refineries, when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, and today, without anybody being in prison or being...
My wonderful people, what do you think about this? Please feel free to leave your thoughts in the comment section. Leave your opinion respectfully and sincerely, alright? And also, don't forget to back it up with facts. Do well to subscribe and like the video, and I will definitely see you all in my next video. Bye for now.